you can see what kind of skill level is needed or necessary for certain positions, because this week, the prison guards in the Epstein case
oh my goodness,
are going to plead guilty. Go ahead.
I mean, you sent me the article. I hadn't been following it. The prison guards, they're going to plead guilty to filing false records as relates to their what was supposed to be 30-minute supervision of Jeffrey Epstein. The article that you sent me, Robert, I mean, it's not called bearing the lead. It's called framing the discussion or framing the article. Everything that article, every way in which that article was drafted was Epstein defied the second or first eternal truth, that he did not take his own, that he did bona fide take his own life. It's a foregone conclusion. It's all drafted around that. In the first paragraph, they mention that fact twice. And so the entire foregone conclusion is that this is all the unfortunate result of two overworked employees of a federal prison system that is understaffed, overworked. They're working their second 8-hour shift in a day, overtime, yada, yada, yada. They're sleeping on the job because they work so hard. There is not an iota of suspicion, of questioning the narrative. It is just, the narrative is he ended his own life, and the only reason it happened was because he was left alone, because these federal prison systems are understaffed, overworked, and these crooked guards falsified their reports that they had to be checking on Epstein every 30 minutes. And they didn't, allegedly. They're going to plead guilty and probably get community service, and that's it. Everyone can carry on with your day. I mean, first of all, I know nothing about the federal prison system in the United States. Is it as grossly underfunded? Is it as dilapidated as this article makes it sound that it is, such that everyone's just working 25 hours a day?
That's completely false. So he was in a federal detention center. So that's not run by the Bureau of Prisons generally. That's run by the United States Marshals. The Marshals run it. Now, they staff it with their own people, but that's actually, you're in the Marshals' custody when you're awaiting trial. And the entire excuse to detain people pre-trial is that they have great health services, that they're completely safe facilities, that violence never happens, that they have a very professional staff, they're given lots of cash. And so, in fact, the federal system is much more protective than the state system is. This is nothing like state jails or state prisons. And ask anybody who's ever been detained. They would much rather be in a federal detention center than be even in a federal prison, definitely than a state jail or state prison. So these are highly professionalized places. To give an example, that place in MDC in Manhattan had not had a suicide in, I believe, a quarter of a century. So that gives you an idea for how the system is protective. They'd actually designed the prison cells so that it was near impossible to commit suicide. Designed the sheets and clothing to be rip-off so you couldn't do it. Had cameras right on the cell of high-risk defendants so that you would be watching it and observing it, and had people observing it. And I've done, wrongful suicide cases, other cases, so I know what these rules are. It's in the state system, it's nowhere near as good as the federal system. It's extremely rare to hear this happening in the federal system. So what this is, this looks like a plea deal that is getting justice for what happened. It's actually a plea deal that is a cover-up for what happened. As long as these two people agree to the official narrative that they just fell asleep and then lied about it later, because the problem was...
I was just going to say, and set aside the findings of the coroner. I mean, setting aside that, where everything you've just described on its face, to most reasonably cynical people who have an iota of understanding of how things work, would be laughably implausible on its face. And call us conspiracy theories. When you can predict the future and then the future happens, you could say it's a question of a fluke or whatever, or it's just so predictable that it's undeniable. And give Styx Hexenhammer some credit, because I think everyone was predicting it, but he was predicting it loudly. But when it happens, and then you have all of these excuses coming into play as to how this could happen, setting aside the most least talked about fact about all of this, the coroner report itself, which came to a determination, unless I'm wrong, Robert, correct me if I'm wrong, that the indications were more in line with an act of one's hands as opposed to an act of a rope. in terms of crushing certain parts of the trachea, I think, or the clavicle. I think it was the clavicle. There was setting all.
He had injuries on his face, his body, and his neck that was not consistent with suicide under the circumstances present here. But if you're going to uncover this, the weak link were these two officers, because they were supposed to be on duty. They're supposed to observe it. Maybe they did. Maybe they helped facilitate it. They would be the ones to know. They would be the ones that might have been paid off, or blackmailed into whatever happened. They were the weak link to if there was a conspiracy to kill Epstein. By letting them plead and serve no jail time at all and just walk free based on pushing the cover-up narrative, tells you that they're going to cover this up for good. That's all they're going to do. They're not pursuing anything further. It's all nothing to see here, everybody. And as you pointed out, you know that's true by how the narrative is being spun. When they keep repeating it, don't worry, Epstein killed himself. Eternal truth number 2, Epstein didn't kill himself. You're still mute.
I'm sorry, that's because I had to cough and I didn't want to start any rumors. I am okay. Hold on. I just got to read the first paragraph. Is son of a bee sting. Where is it? Oh, I may have to find it later. I was sure the first paragraph lays the brickwork. How is it that it could happen that Epstein was allowed to kill himself? It frames the discussion, so you don't even question the premise of the article. But everyone here watching questions the premise of the article. Call us whatever names you want. There's the only difference between conspiracy theorist and critical thinker is in the confession through projection of the accuser. Boom, shaka. That's going on a cup one day. Now, but a serious question, and it's a concerning question. What's going on with Ghislaine Maxwell, and how does this reflect on her future?
Dollars to donuts. They'll cut a sweetheart plea. Not real sweetheart, but they'll cut a plea deal with her that keeps it all quiet. That nothing will ever come out publicly. That's where this is heading.
And this is how our community, gets the truth. It was a fractured hyoid bone, which was more consistent with a certain act than another act. So come to your own conclusion.
Exactly. It's not. I mean, put this way, I know this stuff backwards and forwards. I had people like whatever name was Beyond the Law or whatever, block me because I was saying that their opinions that this was suicide don't make sense. I mean, I've done these cases for 20 years in state facilities. So and I have a bunch of clients that have been inside federally. So I know this landscape very well, including in New York. They've been detained. So the idea that this could, as soon as it happened, I was like, there's no way that happened the way they're trying to say it did. But the cover-up is in full gear, and it's now wrapped up with a nice, tidy bow.
All right. Well, and Neanderthal says, to be fair, I've worked in prisoner suicide. I've worked in I'll slow down.
Oh, sure, they can be creative. But the problem here is they designed this facility so that couldn't happen. And amazingly, all the precautionary supervisory components just vanished. And the official story now is going to be the camera just malfunctioned and the supervisors just fell asleep. If you buy that, I got a couple of bridges in Brooklyn to sell you.
The injuries were more consistent with one conclusion than another. The cameras, which are supposed to be 24/7,
and it wasn't hanging yourself from paper sheets that cut off when you try to. I mean, people should study. It'll be kind of like the OJ case, which we'll get into later. That if you really dig into the government's narrative, it requires the most ridiculous storyline possible, and the evidence just doesn't substantiate it or conform to it.
Injuries inconsistent with the cause of death. Two cameras malfunctioning. 24/7 surveillance not there. You would have to be willfully blind not to understand what's going on. And it's there's no discussion that can be had, because at some point people are just shutting off the critical thought part of their brain. If they're saying, I believe that it was one of those exceptional cases where that thyoid bone broke through a rope. I believe the cameras didn't work and they don't have any video footage. I believe that the guards who are supposed to be checking every 30 minutes. This is not, I don't want to say Joe Schmo. This is not nobody. This is public enemy number one. Keep protected at all costs. They had to visit him every 30 minutes. Oh no!
How did both guards manage to fall asleep at the right time?
Because
they had to have two.
They worked an 8-hour shift.
Come on.
You know, because they worked a double overtime. They're so tired that, so help me God, I can't fall asleep during the day, period. But you fall asleep for 1 minute, 2 minutes because you doze off. It's laughable. It's laughable, and the ultra laughable thing is people like us having this discussion somehow get demonized for having the discussion. But we'll see.